Hello everyone, I'm Massetti. I've spoken about this a lot in my content around the behaviors that matter in the workplace. And that's exactly what this is. They are behaviors that, as an employee, if you focus on and you do well, set you apart from everyone else. From a manager's point of view, they are the behaviors that we need to try to make very clear to employees exactly what they are and how to get there. And I created this framework to really create the same language around how we can all be striving towards the same professional goals and ways to contribute to the business, and managers to be able to be really clear and explicit on the things that matter. What I found in both coming in as a professional and also managing teams myself has always been I was so unclear when I came in as far as what success looked like. And I knew what it looked like in the context of the job. That was pretty clear. But everything else that surrounded that, in terms of how do I show up as an optimal professional? How do I accelerate my career? How do my manager make a real decision on if it's me? Because I knew that it was just not around the metrics itself. It's how you operate within the organization. And from the manager's point of view, I really struggled oftentimes with giving feedback and the things to work on in a way where people could act on them. So I'd say things like, well, you need to communicate better. You need to have better judgment and prioritization. But for employees to actually make action on that is really difficult. So I wanted to make it clear for everyone. So that being said, there's 6 main behaviors that are within this. So behavior 1 is organizational awareness. How aware are you of the organization that you operate in? And this really means is, are you aware of the functions, the responsibilities, the personalities outside of just the org chart itself? The org chart matters, but if you've ever worked in an organization, especially large and complex ones, it's a lot more than that. Every team has their own priority and focus area, and so do the individuals that are on that team, right? So all those things are items that you need to take into account and make real good judgment calls around. So that awareness is completely essential. The second one here, communication and clarity. Can you communicate? And it's not just public speaking. This means things like, how do you communicate within meetings? How do you communicate with clients? How do you communicate with your peers? How do you handle things like disputes, because they do happen at work, right? Also, email communication, digital communication, whatever it may be. The next part is judgment and prioritization. A manager needs to know that they can trust your decision making. And those that find themselves typically in perspective of, I don't necessarily trust their output. So focusing on ways that you can show good judgment, and again, we'll go into all those things within Real Work Ready, but showing judgment and able to prioritize, because as employees, especially new coming in, you could be thrown a lot of stuff, and how do you navigate through what's important and what's not? So that judgment around that is completely essential. Number 4 is ownership and reliability. Can I trust what you're going to do? Can I rely on you? And will you own it? Will you own the outcome of everything that will be done? What you never want to be is someone that hides behind the scenes when it's bad news and shows up and takes accountability for something only when it's good news. So focusing on having someone that's going to be the accountable ownership is something that us as managers, we look out for. Number 5 is execution and follow. How do you execute? What's the manner that you do that? Do you follow through on things that you say that you're going to follow through on? And number 5 is the most interesting one, and this is where a lot of the soft skills are also in this, is the professional presence and credibility. How do you show up as a professional? How do you show up to meetings? How do you show up to clients? What is your professional presence like? And there's so much that goes into this. This is one of my favorite topics. And then also what's in that is the credibility. Can I trust you? Again, it all goes back to this piece around trust, right? But your credibility is more than that. It is your reputation throughout the organization. It's your reputation for follow through. It is the personal and professional brand that you're building throughout your organization. So long saying that this is the framework itself, and I'm going to be sharing a ton of content that goes more into these areas, but I did want to give you a brief overview of everything of what it is. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Laura Massetti, or follow Real Work Ready. I'm also available on YouTube as well. So leave in the comments any questions that you might have, and I'll respond to you as soon as I can.